Rocky. Rocky will be on the panel here after the break. So if you all have questions, please save those for then. And we'd like to make a good panel discussion by asking those questions in front of the group. Up next, we have two speakers. We're going to split this time. First off, we'll have Jon Holtztrager, is the Director of Supply Chain Partnerships and adjunct faculty member with the Haslam College of Business at the University of Tennessee. He is an accomplished supply chain professional with expertise in total delivered cost reduction, operating asset strategy, supply chain transformation, and best-in-class supply chain results. Jon held senior roles with multi-state executive responsibility for various regional, North American, and global supply chain operations. He has experience with pulp and paper, consumer disposables, consumer electronics, and electric utility sectors. The majority of his 35-year career is spent with Kimberly-Clark Corporation, Sony, and the Tennessee Valley Authority. Jon now teaches supply chain operations to the fourth-year undergraduates with course emphasis on practical aspects of leading manufacturing, purchasing, distribution, and transportation teams. After Jon, we'll hear from Michael Kodega. He is a managing solutions consultant at the University of Tennessee Center for Industrial Services. He assists Tennessee manufacturers in improving profitability, business effectiveness, and providing them with the resource to ensure safe, healthy, and regulatory compliant workplace. Michael has over 40 years of experience in senior executive and consulting work across North America. And internationally. He has a broad experience across several industry segments, including internet retail, durable construction materials, automotive, consumer products, and medical services. He has directed and advised on lean excellence and Six Sigma deployments, organization assessment, cultural transformation, leadership development, and strategic planning and environmental certifications. Please join me in welcoming Jon Holtztrager.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. I really enjoyed Rocky's presentation. That gives us a good backdrop for some of the things that I will be talking about. In a crowd this size, I'm sure there's 4 or 5 folks out there that could deliver this presentation as well as I could. So I've tried to kind of split down the middle so that I'll touch on topics that will be of interest to folks who are experts in this and also folks who are new to this topic. So today, I want to talk a little bit about what the University of Tennessee can do for you in the way of resources. I'll give you some headlines. I'll give you some graphs. I only have one chart. I'm a supply chain guy, so lots of pictures. We'll talk about why you can't get a truck, and maybe if you can get a truck, why it's costing you more. And I'll suggest some ways that you may be able to cope. Rocky kind of took us outside the U.S. I'll be talking about some things that are going on domestically inside the U.S. that have a spillover effect into your business. So he's already told you what I've done for a living. Notice that I don't have any background in forest products except for pulp and paper. But the places that I've spent time in industry use the same resources that you do. So as we talk about transportation today, I'll be focusing more on the domestic side, what's happening with those markets and how that impacts you. So UTK, so why talk about the university? Well, mostly because they paid my travel expenses to come here. So I'll talk a little bit about what we do. I won't take you through all of these ratings, but suffice it to say we have a very strong supply chain program right here in our backyard. We have been ranked in the top 5 programs for supply chain globally for many years, and depending upon whose number you want to talk about, we're rated as high as number 1, as low as number 5. Supply chain is the largest major on the University of Tennessee campus, more than psychology, more than any other major you can think of. So we've been growing a lot, and we think that's good for the state of Tennessee. The thing that makes us a little different is that we have deep relationships with industry. We have a forum of about 70 global companies, some of which you see here, that meet with us twice a year. Our next meeting is in November. That drives for us a lot of how we conduct our business. It helps us understand what our industry's needs with respect to the research that we do, with respect to the executive education that we conduct, and also with our curriculum for undergrads and graduate students. So this forum is really key to everything we do, and it's key to staying relevant in industry. We'd like you to think of us as your talent partner. Yes, we do confer degrees, but beyond that, we work very closely with industry to help them solve real business problems. So on to the subject matter. A colleague of mine was at the dentist office in January, and while he was waiting for the dentist, he picked up a copy of Rolling Stone magazine. Now, Rolling Stone is not where I go to get my supply chain information, but oddly enough, this magazine had an article called Death of the American Trucker. Anybody see this? No avid Rolling Stone readers here, okay. So this article talked about how all these evil corporations, mostly trucking companies, were going to take all the American trucking jobs and replace them with autonomous trucking. And there's been a lot of news about autonomous trucking, some of it real, some of it hype. But what we're seeing is an industry where we have a hard time attracting drivers. So autonomous trucking will eventually help us. We don't believe it's going to be anytime soon, certainly not soon enough to help us out of the current capacity crisis that we're seeing right now and are forecasting to expect to go into 2019 and maybe even 2020. So autonomous trucks are out there. You've seen examples of these trucks moving from point A to point B, delivering goods. What you often don't see is that there's a lot of police escorts with them, understandably. But this will help us, and it's something that my students will have to manage as part of their career someday. It's just not going to be a lot of help right now. We are simply at the top of a business cycle, which is good for most businesses. I hope it's good for yours. And at the top of the business cycle, when there's a lot of freight moving and there's not very many drivers available, there's a lot of pricing power on the part of carriers. So if you're a shipper right now, you're probably seeing a lot of price increases coming through. If you're a carrier, you're loving this, because candidly, over the years, carriers have not made very fat profit margins. Shippers, when we reach the bottom of the business cycle, providing you still have business, you're going to have pricing power with respect to your carrier contracts. This is the only graph I have. There's lots of these out there. This is a Cass Freight Index, and all it tracks really is cost per mile of freight expenditures, not including the effects of fuel. All of these graphs pretty much look the same. You know, there was a trough in 16, and it went straight up from there into this year. We expect this trend in cost per mile to keep going upward into 19, 5%, 10%, nobody's sure, but we don't see anything fundamentally occurring structurally or cyclically that's going to change this anytime soon. So Rocky mentioned some of the factors that are occurring globally. Some of those do extend to us domestically as well. GDP, as you know, grew a lot last year in the US, almost 3%, taking us to the top of that business cycle. With that, costs like trucking, rail, warehousing all increased year over year. And we've got near record low unemployment, which makes it hard to find anybody that you need to do a job, much less to find a trucker, because truckers are going to where the higher salaries are going. As noted at the bottom, this report came from the Council of Supply Chain Management Professionals. That's where supply chain geeks like me kind of huddle up, and every year they produce this report. It's been going on for many, many years. But the report for 2018 was titled Steep Grade Ahead. So that tells you something about what's happening in the trucking industry. So the the factors affecting capacity are many. Some of them are the continuing poor working conditions for drivers. That really hasn't changed. A long-haul trucker's job is still kind of a tough job. The working conditions are not great, and so it's hard to attract young drivers to that. Wages are rising. In fact, a friend of mine is a C-level executive for a major truckload carrier in the United States. They've had 2 driver pay increases this year already. They were talking amongst themselves at this carrier about how much more wages would have to rise for the American trucker for us to reach an equilibrium where we think we have enough drivers. Their own back of the napkin sketch said, we think we're going to have to add an incremental $30,000 a year to driver pay to get us to the point where we can attract enough drivers. At the top of a business cycle, you can see this at any major city. There are cranes on the horizon, building buildings just as far as you can see, and so that work tends to attract a large portion of this base of drivers. They can sleep in their own bed. They can make a lot more money as an electrician or a welder or whatever their trade is, so they tend to go after those wages. And then when we reach the bottom of the business cycle again, and there's no construction work available, they go back to driving. And as Rocky pointed out with some of his demographics, drivers are aging out of the workforce. We're not attracting replacement drivers, and so the ones that are retiring are simply leaving the workforce. Additional capacity factors. Weather, of course, is a big one. When we have hurricanes come through, that has the effect of taking capacity off the road and out of our orbit. U.S. highway infrastructure, another huge impact. It tends to take capacity out because it slows drivers down. A driver could perhaps make 500 miles a day, a long-haul driver, if the stars and planets align. If there's traffic delays or if there's construction that slows him or her down, obviously he or she can't get as far in the amount of time that they have to drive, so that takes capacity out. The regulatory environment takes capacity out. So about a decade or so ago, we enacted hours of service legislation that took capacity out. Recently, last December, I think it was, we implemented ELDs, electronic logging devices, which made it easier to cheat, if you will, on your paper logs. That had the effect of taking capacity out. And e-commerce, the Amazon effect is hitting us all the same way. It has the effect of taking capacity out of a market where capacity is already short. This results in fewer trucks available, and you may be seeing this showing up in your business as well. Now, carriers are business people, obviously, and if they have limited capacity, they want to move up to higher paying customers. So customer profitability is more and more on the radar screen for carriers today. I was in Chicago last week at a carrier conference. I actually had carriers and shippers. One of the things I remember was that carriers would rather lose a bad customer than to lose a good driver. And by bad customer, I mean low profitability customer. So they're very, very much attuned to what they are making on a cost per mile basis. We've seen spot market pricing go up 30% in some cases this year. And we see drivers themselves being more selective about where they go. At the end of the day, the driver has the steering wheel in their hands, and they can choose where they're going to go fuel or where they're going to go from an origin-destination perspective. And if they're not going places that treat them well, they just stop going there. So your freight can be left sitting. All right, I work in a university environment. There will be an exam. So here's our one and only exam question for the day. Who has this mission statement? I want you to take out a pencil and paper, just jot it down in front of you, and come up with who you think says we make a better day for our guests with genuine care each and every day. Give you a moment to write that down, and I'll come back and grade your exam later. Don't let the others next to you cheat. A few headlines. We'll go through these quickly. Annual driver salaries rose 18% in 4 years, peaking at $86,000. They've gone up since there. We anticipate they will go up more. The $100,000 driver is not really very far away. That's a reality. Bloomberg said median earnings per share growth, 61% a year for some of these sectors that we're talking about. The Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad, Union Pacific Railroad are all paying very large bonuses, $25,000 a year. Nobody can remember when we paid that kind of money to attract people. So this is mode agnostic. I've directed a lot of my comments to the trucking industry, but this extends beyond trucking to rail and intermodal and also to ocean shipping as well in some cases. Who watches The Simpsons? Anybody? None of you. A couple of you. Okay, so I'm not a huge Simpsons fan, but I'm told that in one of the episodes, Homer Simpson actually blows up the nuclear plant. And to discipline him for blowing up the nuclear plant, he is sent to work in the transportation department. Now, as a transportation professional, it's kind of an insult to me. But what it tells me is most transportation departments run pretty well. They control costs well, and apologies to any CEOs in the room, but CEOs typically don't even really pay attention to transportation because it typically runs very, very well, costs are well contained. And so that's changing. More and more, you are seeing global corporations call out transportation as an issue for missing earnings per share. One of the first companies I saw do that this year was General Mills, but the Wall Street Journal reported that 148 times this year, transportation costs have been listed as a reason for missing earnings, and that's twice the rate of last year. Coca-Cola reported 20% year-over-year cost increases. They think it's going to go up another 10%. I think they're probably right. The people that make trucks and make engines, we work with these folks. They're part of our supply chain forum. Cummins, the engine manufacturer, making a lot of engines. They're selling a lot of engines, so are Class 8 truck manufacturers. So summaries. Tight capacity on roads is not going to come to a stop anytime soon. We think this will continue into 2018 or 2019 as well. That has trickle-down effect to your businesses, and you should probably expect to pay more next year. We're seeing more and more people age out. Young people are not being attracted to this industry. And unemployment, it's anybody's guess where it's going to go, but it looks like it's going to be low unemployment for a while. All right, it's time to grade your exam. Now, my students get about 30 questions on an exam, and so that's enough that you can miss a few. But if you miss this one, you flunk. So some people think it's Disney. Some people think it's Chick-fil-A. Some people think it's a hospital. Anybody want to take a guess at this?
Loves.
What is yours?
Loves.
Okay, great guess. It's Pilot. Pilot Flying J, a great Tennessee company, has figured out that they have to treat the driver with kid gloves like a very special customer because the driver decides where to go for fuel. Yes, there may be corporate purchasing agreements that say fuel here or fuel there, but the driver is the ultimate decider here. So where is the shortage of drivers? We're seeing that large fleets, Schneider, Hunt, Heartland, Swift, Knight, are the ones that are struggling to seat their trucks most commonly. Smaller fleets and medium-sized fleets seem to not have as much trouble, so perhaps this is not trickling down to you just yet, but it could. Technology is helping. Owner-operators now are able to purchase at a reasonably low cost devices that will help them understand supply, demand, what's available for them. The ELD, electronic logging devices that were required last year, have become kind of like a cell. You can use your cell phone to do this. You can log your hours. You can also find out where there's freight available. But it's a relatively low cost, and it gives owner-operators who were historically priced out of having this kind of view of technology and data can now use this and actually get a pretty good ROI. So this levels the playing field for them, gives them greater independence, and it's something that's very affordable. One of the companies that's producing electronic logging devices is a Tennessee company. They're a part of our supply chain forum. Ken Evans, their CEO, says we have to value every minute that a driver has, and that's a huge shift from a decade or so ago when we had more or less plentiful drivers, and we prioritized all of our other business constraints ahead of the driver. That's turned around now, and we really need to value that driver very, very highly. Because no matter what mode you operate in, every one of them has to have a driver at some point. Even ocean freight, you have to have dray drivers on both ends to do that. So some things that are, I would say, somewhat controllable. If you are operating with some of the larger carriers, certainly one thing you want to do is eliminate stop-offs. Drivers don't like that. Length of haul is important to them because drivers make money when their wheels are turning, and the more miles they can put behind them in a day, the more money goes into their pocket. Dispatch times are important. If you're trying to dispatch a load at the wee hours in the morning, a driver isn't going to like that. Drop and hook programs are great that enable a driver to come and pick up a load or deliver a load when it suits his or her schedule. And certainly one of the big no-nos is don't delay a driver at origin or destination because he or she is not getting paid if he's in a delay status. There's a whole lot of small things that will impact how much a driver wants to come to your site or deliver to your site. Is there a bathroom he or she can use? Is it a clean bathroom? Can he get a drink of water? Can she get a drink of water? Is there a lounge? Is there some place that they can get out of the heat or get out of the cold when they do that? Manual unloads, in a certain extent, Flatbeds require some manual intervention, but that's directionally not what you want to be doing. And the low-cost thing is to treat people with dignity and respect, because drivers don't get a lot of that. Your focus needs to be becoming a shipper of choice. How do we do that? Well, we invest in that relationship we have with carriers. We try not to be transactional. We try to be more strategic. We try to partner with them over a longer term and have a contractual relationship versus a transactional relationship. You may have to consider surcharges. Your customer base may be reacting to some of the freight increases that are coming through, and at some point you may have to say, we're going to put in a surcharge, which is never a good thing, but at least it tells the customer when we return to normal in the freight markets, we can take that surcharge off. You certainly want to be paying your carriers on time. Unfortunately, you're likely to be paying more in the short term. And I'll give you a closing thought. This used to be something the supply chain communities always said, hey, carriers, this is your problem. Don't come crying to us. But more and more, we are going to have to solve this together as a community of shippers and of carriers. That is the end of my part. I'm going to invite Michael to come up and give the rest of it.
Controller thing. Yeah. Thank you, John. Good. Thank you. While we're waiting, good morning, everyone. My name is Michael Kodega. I'm with the University of Tennessee Center for Industrial Services. And we are not part of the academic institution, as my predecessor is. We are part of the public outreach section of the university. As a land-grant university, we're required to have a public outreach section. No one knows who we are. There's 175 of us across the state, and we give back to the public. I'm going to talk a little bit about our Export Acceleration Program, which is not our Export Acceleration Program, but it's a national program. And all of you here may be expert and seasoned exporters, in which case I don't think so. So some of the information I have hopefully will be of value. Just a bit of background. During an introduction, I spent about 11 years with the third largest wood window and door manufacturer in the world. And we were very vertically integrated from land leases, logging, through rough mills. I even know what New Zealand radiata is, right? So there you go. And unlike Bucky, I have no graphs. So let's talk a little bit about us first. We are part of the National Institute of Standards and Technology Manufacturing Extension Partnership. And so this is a nationwide program that's run under the U.S. Department of Commerce. There are about 1,300 people like me around the country, and we interact with about 25,000 manufacturers each year. The University of Tennessee runs the Manufacturing Extension Program here in the state, and we do manufacturing excellence. That's lean, operational excellence, Six Sigma quality systems. We do government contracting. We teach folks how to sell to regional, state, and national government organizations. We run the OSHA Training Institute for the Southeast U.S. and do safety and preparedness training for many municipalities and counties and industries in the country or in the state. Energy efficiency and environmental management, and then economic development. So that's what we do as an organization. Brief commercial. We did about 5,000, we trained about 5,000 individuals last year, assisted over 700 companies in the state, and created about $1.6 billion in economic impact, and that's the only measure that we have. We're not looking for revenue, we're a not-for-profit organization, we're not looking for anything other than to help people gain economic advantage. There's about 50 of us or so covering the state. We work with higher education institutions all across the state. These are resources that we can tie into relative to expertise. And if we don't know what you need, then we can find it through our national network or through our university systems. And we partner with a number of organizations, several of which are in the room helping today. So So let's talk about export tech. And again, I have a very short presentation, so we'll let you get off to break. Export tech is a export acceleration program that is administered nationally. It is, again, governed under our national organization, and its sole purpose is to assist those who would like to, or are moderately, or accidentally, or sometimes moderately involved in export. It is a strategy and business development process. Simply put, we are putting a group of folks in the room, just a few companies, 4 to 6 to 8 maximum, and we are putting you in the room with the experts that you need in the region that you're in to be able to accelerate your export program. There's 195 countries in the world, right? So if we take China out, right, take the US out, and probably Canada if you're shipping wood products, there's 192 countries that are still available for you to expand your wood and forest products into. And it's not just training, it's not just training and education. It is actually an interactive program where we ask you to build a business plan, and is vetted by top export experts, and they're harsh critics in many cases. We offer at least one program a year in the state, and there are multiple programs across the country and adjacent states as well. Looks something like this. There are really 3 sessions. Each one is about a month apart. The first one is where we do a little bit of lecturing, but mostly we're getting you introduced to all of the key resources in the room, if you will. And all of those resources are there gratis. All of them come of their own volition. We don't pay them. You don't pay them. They're there because they want to help you to accelerate your export program. And they are the best of the best in every resource you might need. And if the resource that you don't need isn't there, or that you need isn't there, we will find them and make sure you're connected to them. And so we employ students to be able to do the market research for you. So we'll bring in faculty and students from the nearest university in terms of marketing, and they will work on doing your market research for you. So you leave the first session and you say, okay, I've picked a couple of companies, or I want to validate a couple of countries. And they will do the market research for your products in that particular country and bring that to you, so that the second session you come in, and this is where we begin developing the actual business plan. And so we'll go through a number of introductions and discussions from each of the key resources, talking about internet protocol, for example, talking about in various countries, talking about cultural acclimation. You don't want to use the term Nova, Chevy Nova in Mexico, right? No, it doesn't go. Those types of things and how you interact in different countries. Legal, intellectual property, banking, financing. The SBA will come in and talk about Incoterms. Ex-Im Bank comes in and talks about their loan and lien process and insurance. So there's all of the experts assemble in the room and go through all of those programs with you. We have logistics providers that are providing information relative to export, similar to what John just talked about. Then you go away, you create your plan, you come back, and the third day is where each company presents their plan, and they present it to all the other companies, and they present it to the panel, another panel of experts, where it's vetted. And these folks don't hold no holds barred. They will say, that's great, or that isn't going to work, go back to the drawing board. By the time the program is over, you come out with Gold Key representation, and that's funded partially through FedEx, one of our partners. The U.S. Commercial Service is a key partner with us in this endeavor. They will have contacted these countries already and set up visits for you relative to the Gold Key, and they will also have vetted the program for you as well. So you come out with a business plan. It's financially viable. You know what you're going to sell, where you're going to sell it, and you'll have partners that are set up in the countries of choice that you have interest in accelerating your exports. So why is it different? Well, you come out with a plan. It's a solid plan, and we follow up with you. to help you implement that plan. It's very intensive and it's very structured. These 3 sessions are long days. There's a lot of work in between, and each company is assigned an expert coach. Again, these are free, and the coaches help you get through your export plan, and a lot of the work, again, is done by student interns in terms of the research. Again, we're connecting you to a wide variety of regional resources. I've held programs in East Tennessee, Mid-Tennessee, and in this region here, and there are mostly different people that participate in the different regions. We want somebody that's right in your backyard. And these experts exist all across the state. We work in conjunction with the district export councils, to get seasoned and experienced exporters to be there to answer your questions and work with you. Our partners include the export councils, the state trade offices. FedEx is a key funding partner for us. All the universities, SBDC, SBA, logistic companies, consultants, XM and regional banks participate with us. City governments and county governments in some cases, intellectual property attorneys, and a whole pile of other economic development organizations. The state of Tennessee has an export, an international branch, and they are partners with us as well in this, and they provide resources before and after the program. Some of the results: about 173 programs have been completed in 33 states with over 900 companies, and this is about a year old, so we've done a few more across the country. We see average increases of sales between $500,000 and $700,000. 2013, we had a program in Knoxville, and one of the participants there, Nanotechnologies, actually increased their sales by $1.2 billion. They went on to be the national winner for that particular year. Actually, the owner just sold the company for a lot, so good for them. These are typically small and medium-sized companies. We're not talking about working with International Paper or any of the large firms. They have their own internal resources. They export all day long. We might bring IP in for advice, but these are all small and medium-sized companies. And we've done over $400 million in sales increase, and about 70% return rate. There's about 20% that maintain even, and about 10% that lose a little bit. So a very, very good success rate. And we look at new to export companies. We look at moderate or export reactors, or we look at those who are successful in exporting but would like to expand to different countries. It's a great program, and it's available about once a year in the state of Tennessee. And if you are from an adjacent state, except for Mississippi, all of our partners in each of the states offers this program. And Arkansas is actually doing about 4 a year now. So see us if you're interested. I can put you in touch with the regional partner in your state, or if you're a Tennessean, I'm your guy. So thank you. We appreciate your attention, and enjoy the conference.
We appreciate that, both John and Michael. It's very, very informative. I want to remind everybody about the trade show is open during our breaks and from 3:30 to 5 p.m. Please go visit our exhibitors. They paid to be here, and they have services that can help you all. So go see them. Don't forget your bingo card. If you get them signed by everybody, turn it in at the registration desk. There's going to be a drawing tomorrow at 4:45 for a $100 gift card to Bass Pro Shop, which is also a stop tomorrow evening for our bus ride downtown. So make sure you visit them. Also, this afternoon and tomorrow afternoon, there's going to be a speed conference where our exhibitors can come